Dr. Cole hails from the great state of Idaho, the land of dear hearts and gentle people who live in my hometown. It's an old Bing Crosby song where he's from, and my father-in-law was born and raised there. Greatest immunologist, pathologist, Mayo trained. You need to hear what he say, and this is not going to affect the agenda. After this, we're going to have the luncheon session. I hope you've all got your lunches. Start eating. The food is blessed. All right, go ahead, Ryan. Dr. Cole, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Littell, and thank you. It's an honor to be here with you today. I do have slides, so Brian, are they going to hop up there? Or there we are. Okay.
Folks, come up here and change the batteries on these microphones.
All right. If you remember one thing, everybody go to globalcovidsummit.org. Share it with your doctor friends, share it with your neighbors, share it with the world. This is 13,000 doctors and medical scientists. The declaration and statements that are there, it'll link you to the declaration to the world that we have made. 13,000 doctors and medical scientists. That's more doctors than are at the NIH. That's more doctors than are at the FDA. That's more doctors than are at the CDC. That's more doctors than are at the WHO. And these are the physicians and scientists that are here to actually treat disease without conflicts of interest, with the moral and ethical obligation to the Hippocratic Oath and to our patients. That's who we are. I'm going to start with 3 thoughts. 1, 2, 3. And if you walk away with nothing else from my rambling, number 1, do not inject the children with this shot. Number 2, do not inject the COVID recovered. And number 3, do not let governments or pharmacies or agencies block doctors and providers from giving life-saving treatments. Okay, next slide, please. Do I have control of that, John, or is it Brian in the back? Huh? Okay. I always start with this, General Patton. If everybody is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. Okay, this virus, next. Next, please. This virus, it's not political. It's not blue. It's not red. It's not purple. It's a humanitarian issue. Why are we quibbling? Why are we fighting? There's something else at play here. A virus is a humanitarian issue. Let's get it done. Let's get it over with. And let's get back to a better than normal life. Next, please. Okay, we have this horrible false dichotomy. Next, please. Horrible messaging. A false dichotomy. There's only 2 groups, the vaxxed and unvaxxed, and we're going to pit you against each other. Nonsense. Yes, there's the vaccinated. Guess what? They're still at equal risk for getting Delta now. Yes, there are those who have chosen not to be vaccinated and haven't gotten COVID. Yeah, they're still at risk too. But guess what? There's this fantastic third group, the COVID recovered. They're immune. Next, please. Next. Bueller, there we are. Willy Wonka, golden ticket to the kingdom. You don't need a mask. You don't need to panic. You don't need to fear. You don't need a shot. Golden ticket, the COVID recovered. And that's a lot of us in this room, me included. And you know what? You're immune. Next, please. Oh, I got in there double. Okay, Dr. Risch, Dr. Bhattacharya, brilliant physicians, scientists, epidemiologists, to vaccinate the COVID recovered is scientifically incoherent. Next. We know from prior viruses, 1918 flu, hepatitis, chickenpox, measles. Look, if you've had a virus and you have a competent immune system, your body takes care of it. Grandma's still immune 85 years later after having measles as a kid. That's because if you take care of your body does what it's supposed to. It's been that way for eons. So to have agencies telling you it's not that way denies Immunology 101, logic, basic science. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. Don't let them fool you. You have an immune system. If you take care of your body, eat the right way, get your rest, take your vitamin D, move your body, lose a little weight, avoid sugar, especially avoid high fructose corn syrup, you're going to be fine. Next, please. And next. Alrighty, next, one more. Okay, yeah, that one too. Next, please. Brownstone Institute, everybody go to brownstoneinstitute.org. I'm not going to read all 106 studies that affirm naturally acquired immunity to COVID-19 is documented. 106 papers, okay? Don't let them tell you that recovery from COVID does not lead to long-lasting, durable, broad immunity, because it does. Okay, next, please. Meanwhile, our CDC just this week comes out with a pretend paper, not peer-reviewed, trying to make it look like a paper saying, COVID vaccines provide 5 times the protection of natural immunity. This is necessary propagandistic nonsense. It's nonsense. Yeah, you get a shot, guess what? You get a big spike of antibodies to the wrong protein for the virus that's not circulating anymore. See, look, we can measure antibodies. Antibodies aren't immunity. That's not the be-all, end-all. So I have 106 papers, and they have one that they did overnight and said, hey, we say this. I'm like, yeah, but that's not science. And the way they did this paper, we'll go into in the Q&A later. Next, please. Interesting that Francis Collins, who just stepped down from the NIH, and his director's blog wrote, isn't it interesting, the primates, this nice little rhesus macaque monkey, have acquired immunity and it prevents reinfection. I mean, the director of the NIH knows this. Next, please. All right, so vaccine, Delta, mandates, really? Do they prevent acquisition of the virus now? No. Do they prevent transmission? Absolutely not. The vaccinated carry equal or higher volumes of virus. Studies out of Nebraska, studies out of numerous places, studies out of Vietnam. The vaccinated can transmit. So if they're saying to you, in order to keep your job, you haven't been vaccinated, you needed to get tested weekly, they need to test everybody. This is a separate but equal civil rights violation to test the unvaccinated while not testing the vaccinated. Common freaking sense. Basic science. Do the vaccines prevent disease? No. Death? No. Vermont, last month, 76% of the deaths in the double vaccinated. Look at the data out of Israel and the UK, if you want real data. Illinois, last week, more deaths in the vaccinated than the unvaccinated. Next, please. This is just one of the studies recently published, household study. Vaccinated just as likely to spread Delta as the unvaccinated. Don't let them test you without testing them. This is not dichotomous. This is everybody. And guess what? Early treatment saves lives of both the vaccinated and unvaccinated, okay? Next, please. Permanent vaccine schedule may thwart your immunity. Study out of the UK. If you get the vaccines and then get COVID, it's interesting that the immune system is less able to make the antibodies to all the parts of the virus. This is important. So if you got vaccinated and then you got COVID, you may have a narrower immune response. This is called original antigenic sin, because now your body's focusing on one part. And think about it. A vaccine is made to mimic a portion of a natural infection. So is it logical to say a natural infection isn't as good as an immunization? No, the immunization is mimicking a portion of a natural infection. The natural infection is the whole enchilada. Next, please. I'm going to skip over this one real quick. Okay, everybody, next one after that, please. Everybody is panicked about antibodies. Next, please. The antibodies aren't the be-all, end-all, okay? Now, we're exposed to pathogens all the time, constantly. If your body maintained an immune response to a pathogen and created tons of antibodies, your blood would sludge with protein. You would look like the swollen, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man of lymph nodes. Our body energetically couldn't sustain that. So your antibodies are always going to go down. Don't panic. Don't panic. And this is a problem with documentation in terms of saying, well, you got to prove immunity. Those antibodies are going to go down. Well, your T cells are going to go up. And we know from SARS-CoV-1, 17, 18 years later, those individuals still have T cell memory to SARS-CoV-1. Guess what? Because that's what the immune system does. And evidence holds strong that that's what's happening. Next, please. All right, this bicycle. Front tire's the spike protein. You get a shot, you get antibodies to that spike protein, that front tire. You get infected, your body remembers the handlebars, the frame, the seat, the post, the cranks, the chain, the back pedals, the spokes, the fenders. Okay? Next, please. Now that bicycle gets into a crash, a la Delta bicycle front tire spike. Now are your antibodies going to bind to that very well? No. So those that got vaccinated have much less recognition of this front tire spike. But guess what? Those that are COVID recovered, they remember the rest of the bicycle. Next, please. COVID recovered. This is critical. IgA, your tears, your throat, your nose. When you're exposed to respiratory pathogen that comes in through those pathways, the COVID recovered developed, next please, this wonderful antibody called IgA. So your cells can produce 10,000 antibodies a minute. You're COVID recovered, you get exposed to the virus again. These antibodies, this IgA, binds and mops those up like that. Why are the COVID recovered not getting COVID again? Because they have this wonderful IgA antibody. Now, if you get the shot, do you form a lot of that? No. Immunology 101. You have IgG in your circulation, but you don't have this in your tears. Why are the vaccinated carrying high viral loads? Because they don't have this. That's why. Next, please. All right, COVID recovered. Why would we reintroduce the spike? It is the pathogen. Why would we reintroduce it to somebody who's already fantastically recovered? You're at higher risk of injury now. Myocarditis, neurologic injuries, autoimmune diseases, latent virus reemergences. It is the wrong shot for the wrong virus now. High zone tolerance. You keep getting booster dependent, and it's like giving peanut allergy shots. Eventually your body says, your T cells say, I'm just not going to remember that anymore. I'm tired of seeing this protein. Immunology 101. Next, please. Other risks. D-dimer, sedimentation rate, things we can measure in the lab, troponin, heart damage. After the shot, we can look at these and they're elevated. You run the risk of clotting. Why would you expose someone who battled COVID and got through to all these things again? You shouldn't. Next, please. To repeat, scientifically incoherent to vaccinate the COVID recovered. Next, please. This is why we're here. We know what they've done this week. 5 to 11-year-olds. Next, please. CDC's own data. As of June, 42% of Americans' children had already had COVID. Now what's happened? Delta's burned through. We know how Delta was a wildfire. How many more of these kids? I mean, this is months later. We're probably at 60, 70%. Some states they are. So why in the world would we be pushing for a shot that can harm the children and people that have already recovered? There is no benefit. The myocarditis in children, 6 times more than hospitalizations from COVID. So the shots, if we gave it to all 28 million 5 to 11-year-olds, may save 28 to 50 lives. But you know what? Statistically, as we look at the myocarditis studies around the world, and it's not just myocarditis, it's the strokes, it's the neurologic injuries, it's the Guillain-Barré syndrome, it's the autoimmune diseases. But myocarditis alone, to save 28 to 50 children, will lead to 5,000 to 10,000 children having permanent heart damage from myocarditis the rest of their life. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. Next, please. Meanwhile, on TV this week, you see the propagandistic advertisements from Pfizer, because the pharmaceutical companies can advertise and say, oh, you're a superhero. They're playing with the minds of your children, most of which are COVID recovered and had a sniffle because their immune systems aren't adults' immune systems, and they got through it like that and you didn't even know it. And they're telling the children, peer pressure your friend. I'm a superhero, I'm getting my shot that I don't need, that doesn't work against the virus that's circulating now. Next, please. Do we use children as human shields? No. Next, please. What we don't know is what matters. We don't know the long-term outcomes. We can't advance the clock. We don't know the long-term safety of these experiments. Where are the U.S. biodistribution studies of these shots? In anyone, they don't exist. Where are the reproductive toxicology studies? They don't exist. They do in Japan, and we know that these lipid nanoparticles concentrate in the ovaries. Where's the studies on immune modulation and neoplasia? What do we want to do to the hearts of these children? Here's inflammation in the heart. Next. Next. All the blue, that's inflammation. That's myocarditis. It should be all pink, no blue. And down below, see that light blue going in? That's scarring. That's what happens when you get damage. Next, please. What about the little children's brains? We know the S1 subunit crosses the blood-brain barrier. And all these pink and blue images that you see down below, that's inflammation. Do kids need this? Does anybody need this? Next, please. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Well, try next. Otherwise, no? Okay. All right, the gremlins got my slides too. That's fine. All right. How many children do we want to put into a wheelchair? How many children do we want to disable for the rest of their lives? How many children do we want to make infertile? How many children do we want to give cancer? You know, the S2 subunit of this spike binds to a gene called P53. That's the guardian of our genome. And that controls, it's our tumor suppressor gene. And we know the S2 subunit binds. Are we going to inject into children a spike that's a toxin that could potentially lead to the turning off of the gene that suppresses cancer? We know that the shots, the Pfizer study in the Netherlands, modifies certain receptors, these little lock and key pattern receptors, toll-like receptors 3, 4, 7, and 8. 3 and 4 are responsible for cancer, 7 and 8 for viruses. After the shots in youth, we're seeing an uptick of Epstein-Barr virus, mono, herpes virus 1 and 2, shingles, other viruses. We know that these shots are modifying the immune response in a detrimental way in many people. And everybody? No, that's good news. Bad news is we don't know how many and for how long. Immune dysregulation. Now, are we going to dishonorably discharge men and women that are COVID recovered from the service that protects our nation, our borders, and our lives? No. I wore that uniform proudly. I served my God, my country, my family. Where are the generals with courage standing up to the people that are making no scientifically based decisions? These men and women have given their lives for us to be here today, freely speaking, freely interchanging. And many of them are COVID recovered. And you know what? Most of them are young and healthy. And if you're under age 60 with no comorbidities, your chance of surviving this virus is almost 100%. And if you get early treatment, it is 100%. So why these young, healthy soldiers, men and women? What about the doctors and nurses that went from hero to zero? Most of them are COVID recovered. Why? Does this make sense? No. Are we going to live under a new healthcare system called Pfizer Permanente? No. Hold your ground, men and women of this great nation. For 2 years, we've seen in the eyes of many fear. A day may come when the courage of man fails and we forsake our friends, the COVID recovered, the military, the nurses, the doctors, our children. And we break the bonds of all decency and humanity and scientific truth. But today is not that day. An hour may come when we give in to policy, big money, and fear, and let truth and data-based science come crashing down. But today is not that day. This day we fight for science, for truth, for our children. By all you hold dear on this good earth, I bid you stand for science with wisdom over deception and fear. Thank you very much.
You're a nurse. God bless you, Ryan. Dear hearts and gentle people from Idaho, Dr. Ryan Cole. Aren't we glad we didn't miss that? All right, we're really on schedule, folks, and you know, God is good. What can I tell you? We have our next speaker coming up, Mr. Jeff Childers, so you can start making your way up here. I'll explain what he's all about in just a sec. Before I do that, a couple of things I did not mention this morning. There is a VIP event after this for those of you who are able to get those tickets. Went like pancakes. Or okay, it was just amazing. And so there's 2 rooms in the back there. Now, just past where you all got your coffee, and we're going to divide up the speakers into the 2 rooms. So we'll let you know a little later about that. So we may have to go a little later today. I hope you all don't mind staying till like 3:15-ish instead of 3 o'clock. Anyone object? Raise your hands. No. Okay, good. There's another event tonight for the Florida physicians who are gathered here today. And so if you are a physician and you've not registered for the event that's happening downtown, please get a hold of me or someone, probably me at this point, to get you there. The Hilton and Danny Gakwa has been very gracious in opening the place up, and they were worried about numbers. But if you show up and there's not enough food, we can ask Harry's to bring some over there from the next restaurant or something. All right. Well, without further ado, and also please, if you're a physician or you need that CEUs, be using this for each session. Our next half hour or so is going to belong to Mr. Jeff Childers, who is an attorney from Gainesville. Go Gators.